All right, good morning. There's my microphone. How we doing this morning, Cameroon?
I am pretty darn good, sir, for a whole bunch of reasons.
Steve says, if I don't have an app update as soon as I try to use it, I have a freaking OS to. Yep, yep. Um,
Yes.
yeah. So, shoo, buddy. Okay, guys. You'll have to bear with me a little bit. I'm still trying to get used to moderating two sets of comments now that we're double live streaming to Facebook and YouTube. Uh, I like that we're getting a lot more followers that way. That's working out great. But I am having to. I am.
Moderate bunches of things.
Yeah, I'm having to look at a whole lot of different stuff. Um, but that's awesome. That's awesome. We've had, we've got a handful of people watching us on YouTube right now, and I'm popping over to Facebook to mute it and make sure that I've got the comments where I can see them.
All right.
And these all seem like things that you want to do before you start live streaming, but the fact of the matter is, because of the way it's set up, you actually can't do them until the live stream starts. So, hello, hello, hello. Whoo, buddy. Shoo, buddy.
Start with the Totar win. Let's go there.
Let's start with the Totar win. Monica Palmer. Oh, I've got it all pulled up. Guys, let me just say this. Jack Posobiec, bless you, you gentle genius. Breaking. Wayne County, Michigan Election Board Republicans rescind vote to certify and file affidavits that their families were threatened. So Chairperson Monica Palmer apparently found her spine, and that is this week's
Win. This guy so much sack. He protect, he attack. This guy no more homo erotic rocket ranches. Got it? Got it. Oh, Jesus. So much wang.
And he didn't just tweet it out. He brought the receipts. And what do I mean by the receipts? The actual affidavit. Boom. Chairperson, Wayne County Board of Canvassers. Board's 4-member board. Michigan primary election was held. Board had a public meeting. Board reviewed the Wayne County election results and considered whether to certify the August 4th, 2020 primary election. As reflected in the meeting minutes, Wayne County Election Director Gregory Mayar gave the board a report at the meeting that included the following findings. So before I keep reading this, let me just give you a quick recap on what happened here. I'm not seeing my audio. There's my audio. Okay, good. Too many things. This is why people pay a producer.
Yes. Yes, this is definitely why people pay a producer.
Maybe I should go work as somebody as a producer. So here's what happened. Wayne County had some. That's Detroit, right? Had some significant election discrepancies, and some of those are mentioned in this affidavit. Because of these discrepancies, the two Republicans, 4-member board, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. The 2 Republicans were refusing to certify the election. Why? Because it just doesn't make sense.
Investigated before they certify the election.
I mean, if you find multiple discrepancies in your elections and you certify it anyway, what are you there for? What are you for? If not to refuse to certify an apparently fraudulent election. Now, discrepancies don't mean fraud, right? They don't guarantee that fraud was committed. But you can have an election that is incorrect or inaccurate without actual fraud. For example, it's entirely possible that the SD cards that were found in Georgia counties, it's entirely possible that if an SD card in a Georgia county was found, which should have been entered, which included a large number of votes for Donald Trump, it's entirely possible that happened by accident. 4 separate times. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something real quick about numbers and occurrences. The number is 3. If you have a murder, you have a murder. If you have 2 murders, you have a repeat offender. If you have 3 murders that are connected to one another and appear to be the same murderer, now you have what's called a pattern. And there's a big damn difference between investigating a murderer and a serial murderer. Right? So when you're looking at multiple iterations of discrepancy, even if it's never proved that there was fraud, if you're showing that the election is incorrect, even if that mistake is completely innocent, that doesn't change that the election is completely is wrong, is incorrect. That because what you're trying to achieve here is that the election reflects the will of the people, the will of the voter. Now, that Wayne County went for Biden is easily a foregone conclusion. But what about the total number of votes there? If the discrepancy is sufficient to overcome the difference in the state's election, that's a big damn deal. Even if it's only part of what it takes to overcome the difference. If the fact of the matter is that Michigan went for Donald Trump and not for Joe Biden, then certifying a statement to the contrary is not acceptable. And if it's not your job to make that certification or to deny that certification, then you don't have value.
Please believe if this shit was in the reverse, where Joe Biden was losing by just all these squeakers in all these states, the left would want every single inch of everything looked at. And rightly so. Especially if they're just kept popping up with all these odd little discrepancies. Gosh, here's a box of paper ballots that actually had more votes for Biden than Trump. Something's funny. Oh, here's an SD card. Now, one of those SD cards was tiny. It only had like 300 votes total on it. And Joe Biden actually got like 20 more votes than Donald Trump on that SD card. But still, again, I'll ask the question. How is that even possible? What's the point of your foolproof voting software if it's that easy to mess it up? Anyhow, who's our friends that are with us today there, Chris?
Right now, looks like we've got Steve and Angie Diagrapont, who you don't know, but she's an old friend of ours from, we'll say, somewhere else.
See you in another life, brother. Gotcha.
Yeah. Angie and her husband are friends from, we know him in the Army.
Yeah, duh. From over there.
Angie, I'm not struggling to remember where I know you guys from. I'm struggling to describe our previous entanglements without compromising any non-disclosure agreements that we may or may not have allegedly signed.
So anyhow, going back to the thing with Wayne County, yesterday I mean, because this all happened like rapid fire. Yesterday morning, it was, oh, they're not going to certify the results. And then yesterday afternoon, they did certify the results under apparent duress, doxing. You know, like I have self-doxed so that
Right.
can never be a threat that's used against me. But I haven't posted my specific street address on the internet either. Like, it wouldn't be that hard to find me tooling around Rockmart, okay? But there's something about posting somebody's exact address. And in particular, anybody with children. Now the threat level has escalated to a point where it's almost impossible to overstate how terrifying that is. And even though I was disappointed, and in our private conversations between Chris and I told him how disappointed I was that they backed down, in part because they've already doxed you. Like, what are they going to do? Dox you again? But apparently, I woke up this morning to some fantastic news. These two officials have rescinded their votes. So now the Wayne County vote is not certified. And good on them. I mean, it's entirely possible that they said, okay. We'll let this go. Fine. And then they went and called their lawyers. And it was like, look, we need legal protection. We might even need physical security. I don't know how we're going to pay for it. So it took them a few hours to plan what they were going to do so they could avoid their children accidentally getting murdered by angry mobs, that kind of thing. And then once they had all that in place, they went to the court and said, look, it's sort of like if you plead guilty to something, the very last thing a judge is going to ask you is something to the effect of,
do you understand what it means to plead guilty to these charges?
Yes, and are you doing this under any kind of coercion or duress? Because a guilty plea, if somebody's like, that can get thrown out.
And we've seen cases
kind of like with Michael Flynn.
Yes, exactly. And there have been cases where you have an actual confession to an actual crime, and the confessor, the suspect that is confessing truly. They actually confess to the actual commission of a crime of which they are actually guilty, and then a defense attorney argues that even though that confession was true, it was obtained under duress, and then the confession gets thrown out, and that destroys the rest of the prosecution's case against a criminal who did the crime, but was forced under duress to confess, was forced under duress to involuntarily surrender his Fifth Amendment protection from self-incrimination.
Yeah,
in cases like that, they would have been better off without the confession, right? Because now you don't just have whatever evidence there was against the perpetrator. Now you have additional contravening evidence against the motives and the purity of the motives of the prosecutor.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I find the law so interesting and fascinating is that it is complex. I hate that it is complex on a moral level, but on an intellectual level, I find it fascinating.
Yeah, that's why we don't beat the secrets out of kitty diddlers, because then we don't get to use those secrets against them in a court of law. And please believe, on a moral level, I'd be okay with beating the secrets out of a kitty diddler.
Oh yeah, I'm totally comfortable with the judicious application of anything up to and including witchcraft, war crimes, and dimension lumber.
Sock full of quarters.
Oh yeah,
that
toaster
kind of
and a bed sheet. Please believe, I will carve I will carve a pentagram on a 2x4 with what's left of your teeth after I've fed them to you. But that's more a practical matter than a legal argument.
Heck, man, just a razor blade and some lemons.
So, on a nearly completely unrelated note, one of my favorite gags, not even gags, it's like a creative tool, is the rat in a bag gag. It's where you bring someone into an interrogation room, and the application is infinite, but you can bring some, especially in literary application, but you bring somebody into the interrogation room, you ask them a few questions, they're not going to answer the questions, and then you look at the other guy that's in there with you. You look at your partner, your subordinate, whoever, and you send them out of the room. You tell them, go get me a rat and a paper bag, and we'll see what he knows. Doesn't matter what I'm going to do with the rat in the paper bag. It doesn't matter. I've just left this interrogatee to imagine what might happen. You know, I could tell the guy that's leaving the room, go get me a clove of garlic and a stick of Big Red. We'll figure out what he knows. And now his brain's like, what's gonna what? I don't understand. Is he going to use the chewed Big Red to adhere the garlic cloves to my eyeballs? What's going to happen? Because your mind is going to take you places. They may not be places you want to go, but it's going to take you there.
Buddy, I have to push you forward a little bit. I'm
I
coming up on
understand.
time, and there's two other things we want to touch.
And we definitely want to look through this affidavit some. And it's International Men's Day. If we run up against the clock, then we'll just have to talk about that later. Sorry. So, as reflected in the meeting minutes, Wayne County Election Director Gregory Mayhar gave the board a report at the meeting that included the following findings. Staff encountered difficulties while trying to canvass the City of Detroit absentee precincts. Quote, he indicated that aside from receiving the poll books on the first Friday and Sunday after the canvass began, the list of voters received made it difficult to determine how many voters actually returned their ballot. He reported that the City of Detroit used the QVF printed list of voters, but there was also a handwritten list of voters, which is common to use both, but the two lists combined put the precincts severely out of balance. Director Mayhar also reported on the difficulties staff encountered while trying to retabulate any absentee precincts that were out of balance. He stated that according to the election management system, he could see the City of Detroit did not scan a single precinct within a batch. When multiple precincts are scanned within a batch, it makes it nearly impossible to retabulate a precinct without potentially disrupting a perfectly balanced precinct. Deputy Director Jennifer Redmond reported on the irregularities she encountered while trying to retabulate out-of-balance precincts. She indicated that in some cases staff could not retabulate because the number of physical ballots counted in the container did not match the number of voters according to the poll book. Staff also requested the applications to vote for Detroit Precinct 444 and Precinct 262. Both containers had fewer ballots in the container than the number of voters according to the poll book. But what was strange was there appeared to be some missing applications. And I don't know if she mentions it in here, but in some of these precincts, and this may be just because the precincts were not correctly segregated for the purposes of tabulating the individual precincts correctly, but in some of these precincts, it is in fact the case that more people voted than there are voters in the precinct. That's part of the problem as well. That's the last page. So, although certifying in the primary election results, all board members expressed serious concerns about the irregularities and inaccuracies. Let me read that again. All board members expressed serious concerns about the irregularities and inaccuracies. Let's be clear about what that says. Despite all four board members expressing serious concerns about the irregularities and inaccuracies, the two Democrats were perfectly happy to go ahead and certify these unverifiable results anyway. So they're totally comfortable with the fraud as long as it's going their way.
Yeah, something's wrong here, but nah, no big deal.
The board unanimously, all four, that includes the two Democrats, approved a proposed joint resolution titled requesting a state election monitor and investigation that stated, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Canvassers for the County of Wayne, Michigan, requested for the Secretary of State at Michigan's chief election officer to appoint a monitor to supervise the training and administration of the city of Detroit. Absentee voter counting boards in the 2020 November general election, be it finally resolved that the Board of Canvassers for the County of Wayne, Michigan, request an investigation be conducted by the State Department of Elections into the training and processes used by the city of Detroit in the 2020 August primary election. So even with these Democrats agreeing with the Republicans that there are sufficient problems to warrant a resolution to the Secretary of State for an investigation into the training processes, even with that, these two
They're still
Democrats
cool with
decided that we're totally cool with the fraud as long as it's going our way. So she says, I went to observe the election process at the TCF Center in November. I went to the Wayne County Canvass almost every day and helped the Wayne County staff. There was a Board of Canvassers meeting scheduled to start at 3 to determine whether or not to certify the November election. Minutes before the meeting, I was given a report on the final canvass. We were not given an executive summary, which was customary at most other certification meetings. During this meeting, I determined that more than 70% of Detroit's 134 absent voter counting boards did not balance, and many had no explanation to why they did not balance. What she's saying did not balance is there was a vote and they counted it, and then they were asked to recount it, and the recount didn't match the count in 70% of 134 absent voter counting boards. That's what they mean by unbalanced. They mean that one of the two counts is wrong, which means that both counts are wrong until a third count verifies one of the two. After the vote, my Democrat colleagues chided me and Mr. Hartman for voting not to certify. After the vote, public comment period began and dozens of people made personal remarks against me and Mr. Hartman. The comments made accusations of racism, there's video of that, and threatened me and members of my family. The public comment continued for over 2 hours, and I felt pressured to continue the meeting without break. I felt pressured. That is to say, coerced.
Yeah.
After several hours of harsh comments, Vice Chair Kinlock suggested a potential resolution. Wayne County Corporate Counsel Janet Anderson Davis told me that I had to certify the vote that night. She told the members their role was ministerial and they could not use their discretion on matters like the record being incomplete. We were told that discretion was outside the board's authority. And like we were saying just a minute ago, if the discretion on the question of certification is outside of the board's authority, what is it for? If the board that chooses whether or not to certify an election based on the veracity of that election's counting and tabulation, if that board does not have the ability, the option, or the authority to choose not to certify based on suspicious activity or discrepancies, then why does it exist? Is it just because commies need to create jobs to make sure that everybody's occupied while they're getting their bread and circus? That's a rhetorical question.
It'd be one thing if we were talking about 7%.
70.
Yeah.
Right.
But 70% have got mathematical errors? That's not good at all. So good on them. They get the Totar win. Like this affidavit, and that one fact all by itself, the fact that the math doesn't add up in 70%, that's That's it's like this. If your financial advisor is right 70% of the time, he's worth every penny, and is right on the edge of getting investigated by the SEC. Okay, that's what 70% means in the real world. I mean, woo, that's a huge number when you're talking about the underlying ethics of this, and it's an expression I've heard in insurance, and I'm sure you have as well. The appearance of ethics is ethics, and holy shit, this does not appear ethical.
Correct.
One bit. Buddy,
Well,
I'm
brother,
coming up hard against time. Can we?
Yeah,
Can we?
we'll go ahead and call it here. I may pop up a little later and talk about International Men's Day and some men's rights issues there with related, but I think we've beaten this horse sufficiently. So I'm going to go ahead and call it there. We're at a half an hour. Guys, thanks for watching. We will see you tomorrow, if not later today.